Time for another Vampires from History. Now, there's talk of like unaliving being attached to it, but there's no confirmed things with this story. But it is interesting because in 2007 there was a documentary released called The Vampire Princess. It was a Hungarian documentary about this woman right here, and her name is Eleonora von Schwarzenberg. Born Eleonora Amalie, she was born in Melnik, Czechia, and she married Adam Francis of Schwarzenberg. She was the daughter of Ferdinand August of Lobkowicz, Maria Anna Wilhelmine of Baden-Baden. And I am not sure if I just slaughtered the pronunciation, but I tried. And in some circles, people say the story of Eleonora von Schwarzenberg inspired or loosely inspired Bram Stoker to write Dracula. Of course, this has never been confirmed. And as I said previously, Bram Stoker was not the first person to popularize the myth of the vampire in fiction. That honor belongs to an author by the name of Sheridan Le Fanu, and the story is Carmilla. However, the connection to Eleonora von Schwarzenberg comes from the idea that is widely accepted that she inspired Berger's Gothic ballad called Lenore. And evidently there were some early drafts that Bram Stoker had of his manuscript, including Dracula's guest that includes the line, "The dead travel fast," which also appears within Gottfried August Berger's 1773 German language Gothic ballad that I just described, entitled Lenore. Now, the associations with Eleonora von Schwarzenberg go back to the fact that there were some eerie things that happened with her, and she was living during the height of times that the vampire panic sort of was just like outbreaking in Europe. And she was in Hungary and Prague and, what would be modern day Czechoslovakia, areas that were basically coming into a frenzy about belief in vampires and those who could come back from perishing. And it so happened that Eleonora started suffering from an unknown ailment, some kind of disease or medical problem. And after she lost her husband in a hunting accident, and that left her very wealthy so she could take care of her estate and her family. And with that, she became obsessed and completely absorbed in books about supernatural beliefs and occultism, and this started to really worry people within the court about her. She also wasn't coming out much. She wasn't really interacting in the daylight, and so rumors began to swirl about what she was doing. And then she started consuming milk from a wolf, which, according to some beliefs in that time, was something that witches would do. And so there was a little bit of a panic associated with her. When finally she died at the age of 58 on May 5th of 1741, things got even stranger because of the way that Eleonora was interred. It's important to note that the whole thing with the wolf milk was also a big deal because of the fact that in that time, vampires weren't so much associated with shifting into bats, but they were considered to be shapeshifters, and wolves were a form that they were commonly known to take. And Eleonora was also very protective about hunters and wolves and not hunting them. So this also put this kind of, shroud of doubt over her. So that when she did finally pass away, the people were convinced that she wasn't going to stay unalived. She wasn't going to stay perished. Some of the things that happened when she passed away is her heart was completely removed from her body. People speculate that was to keep the vampire from coming back from the grave, as the heart being not intact with the body prevents that. It didn't help that they also removed her entrails, and that her coffin was placed in a concrete vault covered in consecrated ground and topped with an inscribed stone. The epitaph read simply, Here lies the poor sinner Eleanor. Pray for her. There was no family coat of arms on the tombstone, or even a family surname. Eleanor's heart was placed in a separate location in a niche entitled the Tomb of Heart, and her entrails are interred in the Church of St. Giles in her family tomb in the town of Trebon, which is in the south of Bohemia. And so many people have purported that Eleonora von Schwarzenberg must have been a vampire, and that is why all of these different precautions were taken in order to keep her buried after she left the mortal coil. And that is another vampire story from history for you all. Aristocratic vampiress? Possibly. Eleonora von Schwarzenberg.